Good afternoon, webinar delegates from as far as Cagayan Valley to Lucas Norte down to Zamboanga. Good afternoon to our school presidents, deans, department chairs, program chairs, teachers, professors, fellow FINEX members, and our guest speakers. I am Bobot Landino, your host for today's webinar. This webinar is presented to you by the FINEX Foundation through its Business Education Committee, entitled Understanding How Businesses Are Coping with COVID-19 Impact. This came about as we felt in the committee that we can assist to bridge the gap between the content being provided by the business educators to the roadmap being presented by our guest speakers to their respective stakeholders. We present in our class topics from financial market environment to financial planning, working capital management, stock and bond valuation, to assessing risk and returns. And the most relevant of today, which is how to avert business failures, where two major causes are mismanagement and economic downturn. The main question as business educator would like to ask, how will this content being taught in class connect the dots in the current economic environment? Before we start, I would like to invite everybody in a prayer to be followed by the national anthem. Let us put ourselves in the presence of God. Father God, all glory and honor and blessing, all power and might, all praise and thanksgiving to be to you, Abba Father, to you all. We stand on your word declaring that when we call upon you, you will answer us and be with us in distress. Our deliverer and healer, we seek your protection for your families and all of us from the scourge of COVID-19 and all the manner of disease and affliction. We pray especially for our health workers who tirelessly perform their duties at great risk to themselves. We pray for all of us co-workers in the business community that we may perform our tasks with greater diligence in these difficult times, to serve each other and our country in solidarity and spirit of social responsibility. We pray for all those in authority in government and the private sector that they may have all the wisdom, competence, and strength to lead us and serve through the period of crisis, with special attention of our poor and disadvantaged brethren who are struggling to survive. We pray for reconciliation and peace among all Filipinos as we come to better realize our oneness as people in good times and bad, as a common thread unite us. So in acknowledge of our dependence on you and in obedience, we approach you, Father God, humble ourselves and pray, seek your presence and in turn from our evil ways, that you may listen from heaven and forgive our sins and revive our land. In the loving name of your Son, Jesus, we pray. Amen. May I call on FINEX Foundation Chairman and Accra Law of Counsel, Attorney Eusebio Ebotan, for the opening remarks. Thank you, Mr. Ebot. So I think we are having a hard time connecting.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me, Babot?
Yes, yes, Ebot. Yeah, it's loud and clear. You may
Okay,
proceed.
sorry. Okay, good afternoon to our
Good afternoon.
esteemed professors and teachers in the field of business education, the members of the FINEX Foundation's Business Education Committee, friends, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the FINEX Research and Development Foundation, Inc., and its Business Education Committee, welcome to today's webinar entitled Understanding How Businesses Are Coping with the Impact of COVID-19. This webinar is being conducted exclusively for you teachers for free, as the FINEX Foundation hopes that you will be able to learn from the expertise, skills, and most importantly, the vast experience of our three distinguished speakers. Today we will have Maria Victoria or Marivic C. Españo, the Chairman and CEO of Punong Bayan and Araulio, one of the Philippines' leading professional services firms. Marivic joined PNA Grant Thornton in 1997. Prior to joining PNA Grant Thornton, Marivic worked with the Department of Finance, the Senate of the Philippines, and Atlantic Gulf and Pacific. Marivic was the 2018 president of the Financial Executives Institute of the Philippines, Inc., or FINEX, and is currently the chairperson of the FINEX Academy. She is also a sitting member of the Board of Governors of the Management Association of the Philippines. We will also have with us Jose Jerome or Jeng R. Pascual, the CFO, VP Finance and Treasurer of Pilipinas Shell, which he joined in 1986. He is also the chairman of the Shell Philippines Pension Funds. Jeng was given 2 foreign assignments by Shell, first to the Netherlands from 1998 to 2000, and then to Kazakhstan from 2005 to 2009. He was awarded the prestigious ING FINEX CFO of the Year Award in 2014 and is the current president of FINEX. He also sits as a trustee of the FINEX Foundation and as a director of the FINEX Academy. Lastly, we will have Jaime or Jimmy E. Esmael, the chairman, president, and CEO of the Ortigas Land Corporation and its subsidiaries. Jimmy is also concurrently a senior vice president and former group CFO of Ayala Land Inc., under secondment to Ortigas Land Corporation, which is a joint venture among Ayala Land Inc., SM Prime Holdings Inc., and the Ortigas family. He is also a managing director of Ayala Corporation. Jimmy was the 2015 president of FINEX and currently sits as a trustee of the FINEX Foundation. In 2011, Jimmy was also awarded the coveted ING FINEX CFO of the Year Award. As all of you can see, there's much that can be learned from our three distinguished speakers, FINEX presidents all, and two of whom are CFO of the Year awardees. I wish to thank our speakers for spending their valuable time with us today and for the willingness to share their insights, knowledge, and experience with all of us. The FINEX Foundation hopes that you teachers will be able to absorb the information and advice shared today in order to be able to better teach and train our future business leaders and finance executives. Thank you all for attending this afternoon's session. I look forward to your active participation in this webinar. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat.
Well, thank you, Ebot. So, as earlier presented to you, today's webinar features the FINEX Finest, as we have three FINEX past president and also our moderator, a past FINEX past president. And two gentlemen are two former ING CFO awardees. So how do we go about this webinar? Each speaker will have 10 minutes for their presentation. Question will be entertained during panel discussion after all the three speakers have presented. The moderator of the panel will be Mr. Roberto Bobby Borromeo, currently the President and CEO of Asian Center for Legal Excellence, ACLEX. He was the President of FINEX in 2009 and FINEX Foundation Chairman in 2010. He is likewise the President of the FINEX Foundation for Entrepreneurship, FFEI, a trustee of CIBI Foundation, an independent director of Wilcon Corporation, a board advisor of BPM Vision Philippines, and a licensed investment solicitor with Sun Life Asset Management Company. Mr. Borromeo graduated from Ateneo de Manila University with a Bachelor of Science degree in Management Engineering and completed his MBA course at the University of the Philippines. Now, may we ask Marivic Españo for her presentation.
Hello. Let me try to set up my slides first. Okay. Let me try that one. There you go. Share. Okay, can everybody see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, there you go. So good afternoon, everyone, our friends in the academic community. You know, COVID-19 has really dramatically brought all of us to a new paradigm where we need to deal with the resulting changes in the marketplace. And to a large extent, the ways we do business now would have to change. To deal effectively with this changed business condition, businesses must be required to reshape its external organization and processes and look for alternative sources of financing. Now, what does this have to do with the teachers and the students taking up business courses. The current situation provides an opportunity to relate the lessons that you are delivering to students on real life situations. Business educators can integrate the pandemic into their lesson plans using the students' natural curiosity about what's happening in the world around them to deepen their understanding of business concepts like strategy and governance, forecasting, scenario planning, business process improvements, and people management, to name a few. So if you look at it, this if you apply what is happening right now, the discussions in the classroom would no longer be, theoretical. You can cite specific instances where these skills or taught principles or ideas can be applied. So we hope that you can take away in this afternoon's webinar that perspective and be able to enrich the discussions in the classroom. My role this afternoon is to present a framework on, how businesses are currently looking at the situation. Now, just a quick review. We are all aware that the threat of the COVID emerged late in 2019, but probably in the Philippines, we started to seriously look at it in February when our government officials and business sector faced the reality that it may actually hit us in the Philippines. I recall that in March, maybe a week before it was announced, the lockdown was announced, I was still conducting a talk in a conference with a room full of about 300 participants. So when this thing happened, everybody was really unprepared for it. Even big businesses with prepared business continuity plans had difficulty coping for a long period of slow business activity. Most of us are shocked, frustrated, angry, scared about the future. There was such a mixed set of emotions as we realized that the well-developed business plans that we have been talking about might not be sufficient. Safety of employees is the paramount consideration, of course, but businesses recognize that the impact of the pandemic may require really drastic measures. And so around April and May, we started to see news about business closures and layoffs, and more are expected to come. Now, where are we right now? Allow me to share this illustration prepared by the Australian Institute of Company Directors. Here you would see the direction of business. So first of all, when there was a travel restrictions being announced, social distancing, work from home, slowly we were seeing the impact. And there is optimism that we should be able to rebound immediately. Of course, the situation of industries, of businesses are different. So some may take a U shape, meaning it may take a while before they can actually recover. Some may be able to recover immediately, depending on how fast they're able to react and adjust their businesses. Unfortunately, it is a reality that some businesses may decide to close because of the significant impact of the situation to them. So how right now, so before, during the lockdown, the mode really was, how do I survive? How do I keep my business afloat? And as we now re-enter into the business, hopefully the regular, normal business operation, we realize that things really have changed for businesses. And therefore, it is important that they recognize the impact of these changes on their business. Hindi pwedeng business as normal, no? Sabi nga, the new norm, the next norm. And when we talk about the new normal or the next normal, these are the things that we have been advising our clients at PNA Grant Thornton to talk about, to analyze. Basically, there are 5 major points. Number 1 would be capital and resources. Second would be clients. Third would be workforce. Fourth, operational model. And lastly, supply chain. I'll discuss briefly what this means to business, and I'll allow my two other speakers, co-speakers in this panel to share the specific example. Okay. So when we talk about capital and resources, I would say that in the, when we had the lockdown, everybody was really trying to look at their cash position. Sabi nga during that time, cash is king. So the businesses were looking at, how much money they have in their bank accounts, how much credit lines do they still have available? Would the bank lend to them if they have credit lines? No? They're looking at customers. Will customers be able to pay? If they have goods that have they been able to deliver, would they be able to bill the customers so that they can pay, assuming they're willing to pay? So that's on the inflow side. On the outflow, businesses were looking at expenses. What are the priority ones? Ano pwedeng i-defer? Can they talk to their lessors so that they can have a grace period? Or it can be waived if that is possible. They're talking to their banks, to their major suppliers. Now, as we move to the next phase, which is the restoration or rebuilding, the assumption here is that the company has more or less reached a reasonable level of comfort or confidence on its daily operations, no? At least the critical ones. So moving forward, they would have to decide where are they going to get the money to rebuild their business. So possible sources of money or funds would be, the stockholders. They can put in additional capital or lend money, advances. They can look at banks, possibility of opening new credit lines if they have a good relationship with banks. In some countries, government is a good source of capital because they provide subsidies, no? To businesses. I think this is very much felt in the US and Canada as well as UK. So there's the business is looking at all these resources and checking whether they would have adequate capital to move forward. Businesses are also looking at their clients. I think in the past, no, more or less, pag meron kang pipeline of clients or customers, you would say that you are in a good place. But with this pandemic, we advise businesses to communicate well to their customers and clients to know how they have been affected by the pandemic. Bukas pa ba sila? Will they be able to pay yung mga receivables natin sa kanila? Or baka something that you have been expecting, hindi na makakarating, or you have to, program that instead of next month, 6 months down the road. You would also have to assess, sila pa ba yung customers mo? Are they still the ones who will buy your products? Businesses must also find a way how to understand and manage their customers. Do they still have the same needs? A good example, for instance, in our office, no? In the past, we have a huge demand for supplies, office supplies. But with people now working online, they don't print anymore. So you probably, mga business partners namin who have been supplying those bond papers, print, ink and all, would find that our consumption has gone down. Value-added products, maybe the customer needs has changed. Now, when they look at this risk on the client side, businesses must also try to find out if there are new opportunities brought about by the pandemic. So there are some industries where the demand has increased because of the social distancing, and businesses must identify if there's an opportunity for them to move their service offering or good or product offering to these new industries. Workforce is a significant consideration. With social distancing being enforced right now, businesses must identify whether, what kind of work arrangement would work for them. No? Iba-iba yung klase ng flexible work arrangements. Merong work from home, work shifts, and so on. So they have to study what's the behavior of their people and what's the best fitted arrangement for them. And they have to provide support if headcounts or skills of people are important to them. Now, when we talk about workforce, sometimes ang tendency is to say magda-downsize. Mag-cut tayo ng tao. Let's reduce headcounts by 20%. What we advise our clients, instead of downsizing, is to do right sizing, which means looking at the business and seeing how the behavior of clients, how service delivery would change, and adjust, look at the organization and adjust accordingly. So wag lang putol ng putol, tanggal ng tao, and then you realize na yung tinanggal mo pala, siya pala yung importante. Okay? When we're looking at the new normal, we also advise businesses to employ digital tools so that greater productivity can be achieved. As we have seen, most companies had been doing manual processes, and when we had the lockdown, nahirapan talaga. We've been talking about technology and tools, but I think it is just at this point that people realize the importance of embracing technology. So we would advise that when they look at the operational model, integrate there the use of technology. When they look at the workforce headcounts, consider using technology to provide better efficiencies. Okay. Lastly, on supply chains, we recommend that they, in the same way that businesses look at their clients, they should also look at their vendors, their partners, especially for critical products. No? How are they affected by the pandemic moving forward? If they're also doing social distancing, will the production go down? Logistics, for instance, will there be a slower pace of delivery of products that you need? So in all of these things, I think the key point that businesses are looking at right now is looking at the entire environment. Yung kanilang clients, people, vendors, stakeholders, because stakeholders expect a return of income from their investment. So how do you manage all of this? And therefore, we would suggest a holistic approach to analyzing the steps that they would like to take moving forward. So I'll stop there and get my two co-panelists to share with us their specific experiences.
Thank you, Maribek, for that insightful presentation. Now, can we hear from Mr. Jeng Paswal for his presentation?
Thank you, Bobot. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, teachers and business educators. I'd like to take you through how Pilipina Shell, one of the top oil companies in the Philippines, has coped with the ongoing pandemic. Now, maybe to start it off, it wasn't just COVID that was the issue. These are unprecedented times, and the oil industry is in a crisis of uncertainty, actually, because we're in the middle of a perfect storm, which affects both supply and demand. So COVID basically destroyed demand by taking away all of the consumption that was happening in the market because of the various quarantines and lockdowns. At the same time, the OPEC-Russia price war created an oversupply because the countries where we're trying to see which one of them, whether it was OPEC or Russia, had the most staying ability as far as the drop in demand is concerned. So well, what we saw locally is that in the second half of March, when our ECQ started, there was a 30% decline in demand. And in April, this declined as much as 60%, the decline in the fuels demand in the country. As far as the oversupply is concerned, the $40 drop in oil price by the end of March from around $67 per barrel to 26 for Shell specifically equated to around 5.6 billion in inventory holding losses. Now, what did this mean? So it meant that we had to revisit our priorities for 2020 and look at what we now call the 3 C's: care, continuity, and cash. So while Marivic said cash is king earlier, we felt that there were 2 other things more important than cash. And first was care. We needed to ensure that the health, safety, well-being of our employees come first, and that we extend this to the communities and frontliners through our network and social investment channels. Second is on continuity. We needed to make sure that we continue to deliver the superior products and services that our customers expect and need from us while continuing to earn their interest. They are also facing their own set of challenges, and now is the time to show them that we also look after them. And lastly, cash. Cash is our ability to maintain financial resilience in order for us to continue investing in our other strategic priorities and to ensure competitive returns. Now, focusing on care for our employees, when the whole ECQ started, the first thing we did was to ensure that all of our 5,000 staff across all of the Shell companies in the Philippines were taken care of. We started work from home and flexible working arrangements. We reorganized shifts in our operations to enforce physical distancing and health screening. We provided financial assistance, such as emergency loans. We also provided temporary accommodation and transport for our staff, including virtual counseling services and 24/7 telemedicine services. But other than that, we also reached around 700,000 beneficiaries throughout the country in terms of the frontliners and communities. Around 19,000 personal protective equipment was given to healthcare workers and frontliners. We distributed 168 tons of fresh produce from farmers and fisher folk straight to the front lines. We gave a lot of relief packs and 500,000 meals to frontliners and affected communities. This is on top of the discounted and free fuels we gave to hospitals and fleet partners supporting medical workers. On continuity, we needed to ensure that we deliver the superior products and services that we are known for. And this will mean that we have to make certain decisions that are based on value, as well as take risks that will ensure that these are delivered according to the intent. So we had to look at our end-to-end supply chain to make sure that we integrate value and mitigate risks. Now, part of this included providing our retailers and partners innovative offers, such as you might have heard of the ready-to-cook Jollibee Chicken Joy, our vitamin promos, and grocery delivery through Shell Select. We also had to make a difficult decision, and this was to temporarily close down our refinery in Batangas, because it was at this time that we felt that the margins being made because of the low demand and the low refining margins didn't make sense. So we had to shift to a full import mode to ensure continuity of supply of fuels to the country. Now, lastly, on cash, we needed to look at the different elements of our cash flow to identify the stakeholders that contribute to the inflows and outflows of cash. And that means looking through our customers, employees, all of our service providers, as well as society and financial institutions and the shareholders. We needed to look at it from an end-to-end perspective and assess the impact of this pandemic and issue on supply and demand on our overall value and cash flows. So that meant we had to go through each of our different stakeholders to identify what were the specific stressors affecting their ability to continue doing business or to continue coping with this situation, and identify how we can actually help and ensure that in helping them, we also help ourselves. So essentially what we did was to establish some cash governance framework and some key short-term strategies. Now, the cash governance framework meant that we had to set up a treasury task force. So myself, together with different colleagues from different areas of the company, treasury operations, accounts payable, credit, tax, we all came together and started meeting on a daily basis from the end of March up until now in order to look at the issues that are affecting cash. We also set up a cash committee that consisted of the CEO, myself, the CEO, the business general managers, and the functional heads such as tax, legal, HR, public affairs, to ensure that we were looking at all aspects of the issue and to make sure that we make the right decisions and carry out the proper actions. Now, the short-term strategies we looked at was first on generating cash and protecting liquidity. It meant that we had to identify and sequence all of our cash sources, whether they're operational cash flows, credit lines, tax credits, even looking at stimulus funds, if there were any, and insurance claims. All of these in order to ensure that the cash continued to come in. We also made sure that we protected working capital. We identified the elements of our cash conversion cycle. We ensured that collections were received on time and issues resolved quickly. We looked at how we get our inventory quickly turned over into cash and ensure that we continue to pay our vendors. We needed to ensure that we were able to stabilize the cash flow volatility and balance risk and reward through price risk management as well. We also looked at managing our creditors and debt. This means that we had to engage our lenders, make sure that we had the right strategy for our lenders and the management of debt, and prioritize our debt facilities. We also ensured that our critical finance operations were sustained, such as things that have to go on regardless of what was happening, such as payroll, receivable processing, supplier payments, and so forth, as well as in internal controls and tax payments. Here, reducing costs, we looked at how we can reduce the cash outflows, and we made very significant decisions in terms of reducing costs. We doubled our cash savings targets, OPEX savings targets to over 1 billion pesos. And we also reduced our CapEx spending by approximately the same, by about 1 billion pesos, which is essentially 1/4 of our original plan. We continue to manage the supply chain by looking at ensuring that these are not disrupted and ensuring that the key suppliers continue to operate. We also identified our tax strategies and opportunities. We are looking on how to avail of financial stimulus packages and insurance claim. And these packages, not for us, but mainly for our other business partners in the supply chain. We also ensure that we continue to support our people and care for them and maintain engagement throughout this crisis. We engage our key external stakeholders, our shareholders, our regulators and analysts as well, to ensure that they're kept up to date on what's happening with the company. And lastly, we ensure that the greater demands on accounting and financial reporting are met. Now, these strategy focus areas are basically covered by the governance structure that I talked about earlier. Now, what have we been doing? We've been looking at 13-week rolling cash forecast or 90-day rolling cash forecast, and we do this on a weekly basis to update how the cash is coming in and how it affects our account, our bank balances. We look a bit more medium term and do a rolling 13-month debt capacity analysis and monitoring to make sure that we continue to maintain the ratios that our creditors expect. And we also look at how our capital structure is affected. We work on our overdues of our customers, trying to negotiate and ensure that these are addressed on time. And we look at our working capital, whether it's a cash conversion cycle or price risk management, to ensure that these are optimized. And lastly, and this is something I think everyone experienced during this pandemic, that the use of checks really delays the flow of cash. So we've moved most of our customers and even our vendors and the suppliers to electronic funds transfer so that we can ensure that the cash comes in on time. One thing that as a CFO that helped me in dealing with this crisis is what we in FINEX use as the criteria for the selection of the CFO of the year, being strategist, catalyst, steward, and operator. A steward that allowed me to determine what kind of response we would do in order to protect our assets and our people. On the resilience part, it took both the operator and catalyst phases or roles to ensure that we continue operating and that we are able to draw on the different aspects externally in order to preserve and maintain our financial resilience and ensure that we are up to date with what's happening in the market. And lastly, as a strategist, I partner with the CEO to collaborate with the board and management to set the direction to enable recovery and recovery and sustainability of the business. Now, when I'm asked how we plan to recover, well, I point everyone to what the government is doing. The Philippines is in a very good position to recover. It has very strong demographics. And it's just a matter of ensuring that people start to have confidence to go out and spend and bring back the economic activity. As a company, and you saw this from Marivic earlier, we're looking at how the different industries are coping and to see how we can actually position ourselves given the different regulations promulgated by the government in terms of the quarantines, to see where the best chance and opportunities for capturing market is happening. So to summarize, the way that we are setting our priorities to transcend the pandemic, we believe that this is primarily an aspect or a point about caring for people and others, to make sure that the people who work for us, who ensure that the things that we do continue to operate, and that moves into the second, to ensure that we continue serving our customers. Despite the pandemic, we continued our operations nationwide. And lastly, to thrive in the new normal, to bring in the cash and make sure that we continue to be financially resilient and capture the opportunities as the country recovers and bounces back. Now, we have just celebrated Independence Day over a week ago, and I believe we all need to look forward to our individual and the collective, look forward to our collective and individual independence and freedom from this pandemic. And what I'd like to do is show you a very short video about us, that kaya natin to. May I request the secretary to please run the video? Okay, maybe we can just show this later. Bobot, back to you.
Oh, thank you, Jeng, for that very comprehensive presentation. But before we call on Mr. Jimmy, can we ask the participant here to again please ask the question to the button below in the Q&A portion. So more or less our previous speakers can have a heads up in your question based on your context. So thank you. Mr. Jimmy, can you please handle the your presentation, please?
Okay, I think I'm still unmuted. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Bobot. Good afternoon, everyone.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us in this webinar on understanding how businesses are coping with the COVID-19 impact. As was mentioned earlier by Marivic, the real estate industry is belongs to that sector which are potential losers, and that's really where our business is situated. So before I actually start my presentation, let me just say that I will start with the framework of my discussion that touches upon the four forces that are shaping the new normal, borrowing from McKinsey, and then the proposed responses, and then using that as the framework, outline how we are coping as a company at Ortigas Land. So as everybody knows, the unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic has forced practically all countries around the world to go on lockdown, curb travel, observe social distancing, and implement other safety protocols. These health measures have greatly affected world economies, leading to a severe global recession, with companies struggling to keep themselves afloat, unemployment rates registering at all-time highs, and people's habits, behaviors, and preferences shifting massively. Businesses are now forced to adjust to the new or the next normal in a low-touch economy or face extinction. In McKinsey's COVID-19 briefing materials on global health and crisis response, they have identified four forces that are shaping the next normal. The first force is metamorphosis of demand. Lockdowns have accelerated digital adoption, which is driving entirely new patterns of consumption. The new consumer shops online far more, is more willing to shift across brands, and is refocusing towards local and domestic activities. The second one is an altered workforce. Workforce demands are shifting, with new hybrid remote work models emerging. Traditional jobs are likely at risk, and newly needed skill sets are in short supply. Thirdly, regulatory uncertainty. Government stimulus packages on top of growing statist sentiments and free market backlash may lead to regulatory shifts. And this uncertainty can lead to new complexities and in government relationships, supply chain, pricing economics, and consumer behaviors, which corporations need to adapt. And lastly, understanding of the virus. The evolving understanding of the virus continues to shift. This changing landscape with idiosyncratic considerations by region results in a constantly changing set of safety interventions to protect customers, employees, and citizens at large. Given these four forces, leaders need to think and act across five horizons. These are resolve, which is to address the immediate challenges that they face. Then resilience, address near-term cash management challenges and broader resiliency issues. Return, create a detailed plan to return the business back to scale quickly. Reimagination, reimagine the new normal and implications for how the company should reinvent itself. And reform, be clear about how the regulatory and competitive environment in an industry may shift. In response to the COVID-19 crisis, we at Ortigas Land have adjusted our battle plan for this year and have called it Rise Beyond 2020. We adopted a three-pronged strategy to deal with the crisis, and these are: number one, preserve the value of the company and strengthen its ability to weather the crisis. Number two, secure, protect, help, and engage our team, employees and outsource providers alike, and our community. And number three, prepare the company and the organization for the eventual recovery. It is important for the company to quickly shift gears towards a preservation mode and adjust its operating model towards strengthening its ability to weather the crisis. Our first response to the crisis was to undertake a strategic business pause. Construction activities were halted, and malls and offices, except those offering essential services, were closed. We adjusted our plans to ensure we have the needed liquidity and to preserve the value of the company and ensure resilience despite the difficult situation we are forced to contend with, while at the same time supporting our tenant partners through tenant rental breaks. It is important that that ecosystem is taken care of, because this very same ecosystem is the one that will effectively help us through the recovery stage. As people are our most important resource, we gave utmost importance to the well-being of our employees by keeping them safe, engaged, and compensated. Prescribed COVID-19 protocols were strictly implemented, and we likewise extended our support to our outsourced personnel, the frontliners, and the larger community where we operate through financial assistance and donations of food and essential supplies. In the spirit of moving together as one team and sharing our blessings, we also launched #TogetherWeGive, a fund drive among our employees, sales force, as well as benefactors. Donations were channeled towards providing support to our no work, no pay service providers, as well as health workers in the communities we serve. The quarantine period allowed us to make adjustments in our operating plan to prepare the business for recovery. We continued planning for projects to ensure push-button readiness, reviewed and enhanced business processes, utilized online platforms for customer and stakeholder engagement, and accelerated our digital transformation and customer experience programs. And with the easing of restrictions on movement of people, we are gradually returning or resuming business activities, focusing sales on existing projects, prioritizing projects with immediate cash flow impacts, continuing to strengthen the balance sheet, and engaging our key stakeholders and addressing their needs. As the global health crisis is shaping the next normal, causing massive shifts in demand patterns, customer behavior, and live, work, play, shop models, the real estate industry is likewise evolving. Based on developing industry trends, as outlined by property consultants like Colliers, we are likewise recalibrating our strategies to deal with these changes. In response to the expected slowdown in residential supply due to work stoppage, we are implementing a push-button strategy for upcoming projects, which we continue to plan towards launch readiness. Meanwhile, we are refocusing our effort on selling available inventory to support the target sales volume and manage risk. We have deferred any new launches to the next year to manage the risk and limit our commitments. We have enough inventory anyway to tide us through what we need for 2020. With sales take-up forecasted to be slower, we have geared up our sales organization to highlight the benefits of investing in real estate in a low-interest environment versus other available options, while emphasizing the importance of buying the right product in the right location from the right developer. At the same time, we have intensified the use of online payment gateways and sales and marketing channels like virtual tours and virtual walkthroughs. As correction in prices and rents due to softer demand might occur, we're highlighting the relatively low vacancy and affordable pricing for our products in our trade area versus alternative locations, and are being more flexible and creative in crafting deals. For the office sector, where less site inspections and longer deals leading to slower take-up is likely to happen, we have established detailed tenant inspection guidelines that comply with IATF rules, are exploring virtual site inspections, and are adopting a flexible mindset in tenant negotiations. We will continue to focus on outsourcing and traditional office tenants, which have been identified as likely to lead the recovery once market conditions improve. To cope with expected higher vacancy, we will offer competitive terms to prospective tenants while meeting business objectives and continue to highlight the brand, the location, and the rental rates relative to other options. With a forecasted slower retail demand, we have intensified our push towards digital marketing and our focus on providing community-centric needs and services. We have put in place safety protocols in our malls and are proactively engaging our tenants and customers to help them with their needs. With shifting consumer preferences, we are further enhancing our tenant mix so that we can meet the evolving demands of our patrons. Given that the completion of new malls will be pushed back due to work stoppage, we have adopted a post-ECQ construction strategy through stay-in workers to catch up on construction to the extent possible, while maintaining health and safety standards on site. We also continue to plan for our critical upcoming projects. With the expansion of offline-online strategies, we implemented a click and collect platform and partnered with food delivery and online shopping companies to help our tenants sell using these platforms to augment on-site sales. Even prior to the pandemic, we have been working with GCash and PayMaya to enable our tenants to adapt to the new trend in payments via e-wallets. The COVID-19 crisis has highlighted more than ever the need to be closer to our customers and address their ever-evolving needs. All these initiatives and responses to the crisis are all intended to deliver superior customer experience to tenants, shoppers, and buyers alike at all touch points. By taking care of our customers, serving their needs, and elevating their experience, we can continue to generate demand and loyalty to our malls, offices, and residences. Delivering meaningful and superior customer experience, we believe, will be a key success factor in dealing with this crisis. We also believe that the success of these strategies can only be achieved through the help of each and every member of Team Ortigas. We have rallied all employees to wear multiple hats, take on new roles, and help one another during these challenging times. It is only by working together as one can we effectively weather the crisis. We need to keep on moving forward so that we can rise beyond 2020. I hope you found my presentation useful, and we would be happy to answer whatever questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy, for that accelerated presentation. Now let's move on to the panel discussion. Bob, can you take it away? Bobby?
Yep, I'm here.
Yeah.
Am I unmuted? Can you hear me? Hi.
Yes, you're live. It's okay.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone, particularly to our participants from north to south. Thank you to our speakers. Thank you, Marivic, Jeng, and Jimmy, for your very all insightful discussions and presentations, and how you wish you were all part of the consultancy team of the IATF, so we could have had a continuing solutions to our problems that has been created by the COVID-19. Now, just to summarize a bit, Marivic talked about how she shared on how businesses will survive by navigating through the new normal. So the The factors considered would be capital resources, clients, workforce, operational model, and the supply chain. While Jeng, on the other hand, talked about their revisiting priorities for the year 2020 in the form of three particular C's: care, continuity, and cash. Care would be basically more involved into the health safety of their employees, continuity to ensure continuous delivery of their services and products of utmost efficiency, and cash, of course, as cash is king, is also mentioned by Marivic, will have to be able to maintain their financial resilience. Jimmy likewise shared how Ortigas Land has developed their Rise Beyond 2020, while he also shared the study from McKinsey on adjusting to the new normal, which we are all facing. Now, the discussions of Jimmy on his Rise Beyond 2020 delved on the key strategies that are ideal with the COVID, to deal with the COVID, and basically preserving value of the company and strengthening its ability to weather the crisis, securing, protecting, helping, and engaging their team and the community, and preparing the company and the organization for the eventual recovery. So there were also discussions on the impacts of the COVID-19 on the real estate industry in general. Now, of course, let me encourage everyone to please post your questions. Now, let me pose the first question. Now, we are all, I would say that the major impact, the major impact of the COVID pandemic on businesses have been due to a word that is called fear. A lot of fears from businesses, as well as fears from the employees and the staff. Businesses fear from bankruptcy, a fear from not being able to pay their debts, fear from not being able to continue their business. While there's fear from the people and the employees, whether they are a fear from getting sick, a fear from losing their jobs, and fear of those who has lost their jobs that they would no longer be able to continue supporting their children's education. Now, given all these things that has been developed already by your respective institutions, on what you also likewise hear from other institutions like the clients of Marivic, do you think such fears have already been measures, meaning, do you think that we have already developed enough measures in order to arrest such fears? Or do you think these fears are still existing up to now, given all these activities that has been done under the new normal? Each one of you can answer that question.
Okay, maybe allow me to start since I'm the rose among the thorns. Well, in so far as our clients are concerned, I think, and business in general, no, I think everybody is more or less in the same boat in the sense that, somebody said it's like a cha-cha. You want to move forward, but you have to move backward because of the fear and the risk. So it's a delicate balancing act. But what we need to do is to really analyze what is happening right now to our business, to our people, and be able to adapt the necessary policies or action so we can adjust. I think to wait and hope that things will go back to normal would be the wrong thing to do. We need to be optimistic. We need to be confident because our people, our clients are also looking at what we're doing. So what maybe in summary, while that fear is natural, it's a human reaction. We need to conquer that fear by taking the necessary steps forward.
Thank you, Vivek. Jen, would like to add to that?
Yeah, sure, Bobby. Yeah, maybe just to build on that, you were talking about fear earlier, and one of the things that we were looking at as a company when this whole pandemic started was, how would we cope? Who are the ones affected? Who are fearing what? To use your word. So that's why we went through our entire end-to-end value chain to look at what the stressors were for each of the different stakeholders that contributed to our cash in order to determine what kind of help and support they'll need. And that's why the first and foremost thing for us was care, in order to make sure that our employees, the people who ensure that we continue doing business, are kept safe and allowed to work from home, made sure that they follow protocols. We provided counseling services, and then we extended this to supporting the communities who actually buy our products, to make sure that they are supported as well. And this is where, the point I said earlier about, going to your point on fear, we need to bring back that confidence, the confidence and the opportunity to spend, because we are in a very, we have a sweet spot in terms of demographics, the Philippines. And it is the very young population, average, I think the median is around 27 years old now, that pushes a lot of the demand for products and services. So what we, together with the government, need to do is to create those opportunities to spend. And part of it is, opening up the economy, but at the same time, making sure that there is confidence to spend by ensuring that the people who go out feel that they are protected because of the measures that the government has taken. So, yeah, it might take a while, but I think the Philippines is in a very good position to recover based on its financial resiliency.
Yes, well said, Jeng. Definitely bringing back the confidence, because it's the people who exercise this fear the most. And once they secure back their confidence, they can start going out again, spending, consuming, because that's the bread and butter of the economy, consumption, spending. Thank you. Jimmy, do you have anything to add?
Okay, I guess there are different, entities or individuals experience the fear emanates from everyone, and it starts from the employees themselves. No, and we, in our case, we need to make sure that first of all, the fear of losing their jobs is addressed. And what we have done is basically to assure them that they all have their jobs, but we will have to tighten our belts, and therefore we have frozen any further hirings, and we will also have evaluate strictly the probationary employees, for example, if we really need to regularize them. So assuring them of the employment is one, assuring them of the safety protocols that we've actually initiated at the office when they all go back to work, providing shuttle services to the extent possible, giving them medical assistance whenever necessary, the hotlines, health declarations that we need to do every day. All of those things are intended to address the fear in the employees, as well as the outsourced providers, who are our primary resource in terms of running the business. So that's one part of it that we needed to address and have addressed. Number two is the fear emanating from the various customers that we currently have. And these are really the tenants, in the malls, the offices, the buyers of residential or office products for sale. And in those cases, the fear of bankruptcy, the fear of getting out of business is something that we also have to address. And what we did was to commiserate with them by giving rental reprieves during the ECQ period. And at the same time, we're doing everything we can, even now in a post-ECQ period, on how to help them come back, probably rise above. No? So even nowadays, while we are charging some kind of rent, it's still a subsidized rate. And we've also done all of the physical distancing and health protocols in the malls to assure them, as well as the public, that it's safe to go back to the malls. So plus the fact that we've also helping them, we're also helping them spur their sales by partnering with online providers, the offline online connectivity. And of course, the fear from the company itself that we may not be able to get through this is something that the preservation aspect that I mentioned earlier has addressed. Now, we have to, first to understand the fear, we have to understand where we are in terms of finances. We have to make sure that we have the right balance sheet that will enable us to weather the crisis. So scenario planning, basically, worst case scenarios, reducing capex and GAE, DOE, all of those things needed to be done so that we can have a better view of the company, as well as refinancing debt to the extent possible, using, leveraging on the lower interest rate environment. So a lot of internal soul searching, internal assessment of the company's capability to survive the crisis, including the necessary steps that we had to do to minimize, if not eliminate, the fear. The fear still exists. Don't get me wrong. It's something that we have to live with. But I believe that as long as we address the causes of those fears and have a good plan to actually that we are executing to address those fears, then we should be okay. And it will have to be again all of the different elements working together to be able to survive this crisis and bring us back to hopefully normalcy.
Yes. Thank you very much. Well said, Jimmy. Now, there are a lot of questions being posted in the Q&A, but let me ask you one last question on my end. Maybe Marivic can pretty much address this question. A lot of companies, big companies, even Shell and perhaps in Ortigas, deal with SMEs. And we know that SMEs, 99% of SMEs deal with all the large institutions here in the country. And based on reports, because of this COVID pandemic, at least 40% of SMEs may not survive. So, Marivic, given your tips on how business would survive by navigating through the new normal, how would you advise, what kind of advice would you provide SMEs so that they can, adjust, adapt to the new normal, prevent themselves from losing business or eventually being bankrupt?
Well, I guess for SMEs, if you look at it, if the business was really doing well, it is a viable business before the pandemic and the lockdown, then there is a basis to say that there's an opportunity to bring it back to that old level. It will take time, but the value proposition is there. So for them, therefore, the key would be looking for capital to re-energize the business. I'm sure for most SMEs right now, probably the first thing that they did was to lay off people, get rid of the fixed expenses, because that's the one that is putting pressure on the capital, right? So
yeah.
how do they bounce back? So first of all, they need to check their customers. Are the customers still there? Is there still a buyer for their product? Is there a different way by which they should be delivering the product to meet the new demands? Okay, or reposition the product. Maybe now that people are not buying so much of dresses, they can produce PPEs and so forth. So they have to analyze, where is my market right now? And then secondly, they have to communicate with their target clients and, you know, make a commitment on delivering these things, the expected demand from them. Subsequently, they can then look at, you know, where could be my sources of capital, my new capital. It can be from family members or clients themselves who are willing to extend that financing so that they can restart their business. I think that's, you know, that's how entrepreneurs, if you think about it, that's how entrepreneurs really work, diba? They
Yeah.
look for the need, they identify the need, they talk to the customers, and then they look for the capital. I think that's the basic framework right now.
Yes, very well said. So, okay, let me now read some of the questions that has been posted. This one's addressed to Jeng. As CFO, what is the most challenging task in terms of managing the working capital of the company, especially that of inventories, receivables, and payables were greatly affected by the pandemic? So what strategies do you suggest to overcome it?
Yeah, as far as, so thank you for that question. Indeed, it's very, one of the most difficult things to manage is you know, working capital. And if you break it down into its component factors, and you look at the cash conversion cycle, basically, you look at your days payable outstanding, your days inventory outstanding, as well as your days receivable, days sales outstanding. Then you'll be able to put the necessary focus and the competence of people around in order to make those elements of working capital churn faster and then convert them to cash. So maybe one good example that we have is, and I think I mentioned it earlier, is on our receivables, because we are now monitoring our receivables and payables actually on a daily basis. We know what we will be receiving when, and we make a projection over 90 days. So over 3 months, we know what amount is coming in where, and if we are encountering issues with particular collections, then we speak with our business partner, our customer, and try to see how we can help them, because this is all a question of trade-off as well. If you are too strict and firm now that you have to pay, otherwise we will stop serving you or providing fuels, then it might have an impact later on when the economy recovers. So we have to look very carefully at the different elements of the cash flow, the cash conversion cycle, in order to ensure that our business partners and ourselves benefit as well.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jeng. Next question, this one was from Gladys. What are the possible strategies for the education in the private sector, especially in their cash management, which are very dependent on their enrollment? Well, anyone can share an opinion on this. In the area of education.
Well, I think the business model is something that is evolving. Virtual classes more likely will happen, and therefore it will be less. I mean, the need for physical facilities to conduct, I guess, the teaching will be less. In fact, I think that's the challenge nowadays. I'm sure even universities in the US, I think some of the students are asking for refunds or reduction or discounts in terms of the tuition fees, because it's now being done virtually. So with respect to, well, in the Philippine context, I'm sure that will also be the question. But I think, well, it's unfortunately, well, hopefully the lack of the need, the lack, well, the less need for the physical space will enable the schools, the private schools, to reduce expenses, except fixed cost, depreciation, etc. And hopefully by making their virtual sessions still as engaging and as interesting as if it were a normal face-to-face interaction, will convince their students to still pay the same kind of fees, no? And therefore, despite the lack of physical, but it's a challenge that I guess educators will have to pay, so school administrators. But unfortunately, that's how it will be in the next year or so, or maybe even moving forward. Even when things normalize, there will be a section of teaching that will still be that will continue to be conducted virtually. So now receivables, if I mean I mean the normal receivable management, if you have receivables, but I guess the more important question is, can you bill and collect? Can you encourage students to enroll and pay? I think there's also a lot of students who are shifting to public schools nowadays, no, because of the loss of employment, loss of jobs, etc. So it is a challenge, definitely among the within the school system, especially the private schools. But I think if you develop a very engaging and very interesting way of conducting it, that will still provide the same kind of value to your students, no? Then well, they should be able to get used to it and will still enroll and pay the tuition fees. Now, receivables outstanding, it's something that normally we can manage through various means, no, in terms of collection efficiency, which is the normal. But I think the bigger issue is being able to charge.
Yeah. Well, definitely the education service industry will likewise be affected by the new normal. So there will all definitely be changes, especially with everybody going online. If this will be something that will likewise be applicable to the educational service sector. Now, moving on to a few questions, perhaps I can go on for about two more. There's this question from Fatima Jaime from FEU. The question is how business operations adjust to changes happening on a daily basis as COVID-19 impacts the value chain worldwide. Anyone can answer this question.
Yeah, maybe let me take an attempt to answer that, because it's also related to what we tried to do in the company when this whole pandemic struck. We looked at all of the different elements of our end-to-end value chain and see how these will be impacted, or you know, what kind of stressors there will be on these different elements. Now, how business operations adjust, it's basically keeping your ear on the ground, because like I said, we meet on a daily basis. At the end of the day, we determine how much cash has come in, how much cash we needed to pay out, how much we need to borrow from the bank. And then on a weekly basis, I have a discussion with the different general managers to find out what's happening on the ground. Is the economy picking up because of the different reductions in levels from ECQ to MECQ, GCQ, so forth, and see what kind of adjustments we need to make in our business plan or our recovery plan. We basically have low, high, medium scenarios on what we expect to happen, and we try to see which one is actually materializing as we monitor business events daily. And you know, if we have to make the hard decisions, and for our refinery, which has been there since the late 50s, we made a very difficult decision recently to temporarily shut it down, mainly because the demand wasn't there, and it was much more economic for us to import because of the rather low refining margins. So, by making sure that you don't just operate the business remotely, but really have people monitoring what's happening on a daily basis, then you'll be able to adjust your strategy and then tactics accordingly.
Thank you very much, Jeng. Now, this will lead me to the last question. Perhaps Marivic can help answer this as not only representing her company, but also as the chairman of the FINEX Academy. Question is, the academe is also finding ways to make the manner of instruction delivery online more relevant and interesting for students. Can you suggest collaborative ways that the academe could work with your respective companies, especially in delivering accountancy education?
Okay. It's like, I think that question was posted by somebody who's looking forward to our second webinar,
Yeah.
which will be in July, which is how to teach business under the new normal. So the speakers that we have lined up for our second webinar will be discussing the tools that educators can use to make the discussions online more engaging. When we say tools, that talks about the technology tools as well as the materials that they can ask their students to work on during their online classes. So insofar as our own organization is concerned, I think what we're having right now is a perfect example of how we in the in the business sector can help put I guess actual application into the teachings that you are currently doing. So with online facilities, I think it's easier right now to invite people in the industry to talk to your classes on, I guess, particular concerns. No, so for instance, if you're talking about budgeting, then you can invite somebody, a CFO or a finance or a budget officer, to share his own experience in that particular field. We can also help your students share what are our own experiences as professionals, so that they would be able to appreciate what they will be doing in the future. There was a particular question that I liked, if I may pick that up. There was a question whether or not there is going to be an opportunity for new graduates to get jobs during these times. I think there is, but the question would be what kind of skills are needed under the new normal. Okay, so that kind of discussion in the classroom in relation to the academic preparation being given would enhance I guess the perspective of the students. So hindi lang puro technical ang dinidiscuss, but they would also appreciate that there are new skill sets needed for them to get the jobs, and there's still an opportunity for them to learn those skills at this point.
Okay, thank you very much, Marivic. And I guess for those who are seeking assistance, particularly from FINEX Foundation on the Business Education Committee, Bobot will be able to discuss with you later on the next programs that we'll be having. In fact, we'll have one on July 15. So with that, now some of the questions may not been answered. We'll try to relay them to the speakers and perhaps respond back to you on this. So with this, thank you very much for the speakers, and I bring you back to Bobot.
Thank you, Bob. Before we end, I think I have to view first the shell video that earlier had encountered technical difficulty. Let's now play the shell video.
Ano man ang pinagdaanan mo ngayon, sige lang sa paroroonan. Dahil ang bawat isa sa atin may magagawa. Sa bahay, sa trabaho, sa serbisyo ng isa't isa. Kaya tara na. Mabagal man minsan, may patutunguhan. Kaya ituloy lang natin ang pagmalasakit. Ituloy lang natin ang pagkapit sa pag-asa. At sigurado, susulong tayo. Pilipinas, kaya natin to.
Again, I would like to thank you for all the participants for joining us in this webinar. We at the DEC will continue to provide technical webinars to assist business professors, provide a better perspective. As we invite business leaders to talk about how they cope for the different challenges brought about by this pandemic. FINEX Foundation, through the Business Education Committee, and the CIBI Foundation is also organizing the Finance Educators Training Program, the FETP. It is a special training workshop free of charge, open to college-level finance teachers, instructors, and professors teaching finance or finance-related subjects in any CHED accredited school in the Philippines. For this year, the FETP was postponed due to COVID-19 pandemic. It is still being decided how to pursue with the training. In partnership with Deloitte, FINEX Foundation also have the Outstanding Finance Educators Award. It is a biennial program that recognizes exemplary finance professors from all over the country. Winners will be chosen from NCR, Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, and one overall winner. Lastly, the Business Education Committee will also launch a book entitled Good Governance, the Finance Function, and the Capital Markets, Concept, Issues, and Cases. To our business professors, we're having another seminar. This was earlier mentioned, so I'd like to reiterate again. On July 15, please tag your calendar. Wednesday, titled Teaching Business Under the New Norm. We hope you can all join us again. Good afternoon.